Welcome to my demo for Illustrator 1. This is Exercise 1 Basics. The first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and launch Illustrator. We're going to hit Create New, and Illustrator icon is AI, so you should see the icon at the bottom, but if you don't, you can go to Finder and your applications, and you can find it in here as well. I'm showing it to you here. And I'm going to hit Create New. Along the top, you're going to see some options here: recent, saved, mobile, web, print, film and video, art and illustration. Typically, I use print. On this far left side, by default, it's going to show points. There's picas, inches, millimeters, centimeters, and pixels, which is awesome because sometimes a client might give you dimensions in pixels, and so you can select that. For this class, we're going to use inches, and it's going to show up as an 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to switch the orientation to be landscape, so my width is now 11 inches. I have one artboard, and if I knew right off the bat I was going to do multiples, I could go ahead and increase this or type in I want 10 artboards. But for now, we're just going to do one artboard. I'm going to skip the bleed area, come down below where it says Advanced Options, change that to RGB. So RGB is if we're going to keep something on the web or just we're not printing it. CMYK is for printing. Since we're just going to leave this and not print it, I'm going to leave it as RGB. 300 ppi, meaning pixels per inch, also known as DPI, dots per inch. This is high resolution. If I click on that, you have some other options. This is a medium resolution, and this is screen resolution. So if I were making something for the web, I would want to select 72 ppi, so it's a little lower resolution, and it would load a lot faster. I'm going to go ahead and hit Create, and it's going to open my artboard here. At the very top, this tells you what your workspace is. Right now I'm on Essentials Classic. I can also get to that from the Windows drop down workspace. I'm going to say reset my workspace to that Essentials Classic. So what we're looking at here, this is our application bar. It's telling us that we're in Illustrator. If I were to click on my desktop, it would now say Finder. So that just tells you what you're actually looking at. These are some options across the top that we are going to be using. So we'll talk about those here in a second. This is to close the document, minimize the document. This expands it to be full page, which I already am in full page mode. And then this line here tells us if like some options that we have depending on what tool that we're selected on. So if I select on the type tool, you could see it swapped out to some things that we might need for the type tool. This is showing us that we're in an untitled document and it's RGB. If I wanted to switch it to CMYK, I could go to File, Color Mode, and swap it to CMYK right here. This is called our control panel along the top here. And these here are our main tools that we're going to be using. We'll go over quite a few of those today. On this right side is our collapsible panels. And properties and libraries are kind of taking up a lot of real estate here. So I'm going to hit the arrow and it's going to collapse that. So now we can see a little bit better as to what we have to look at. I'm going to select the zoom tool, and if I hover over my page, you can see the plus. So if I were to click on the page, it zooms in. If I hold Option, there's a minus and it zooms out. This is my artboard page. If I were to print my document, this is the only thing that would print. Everything that's around it is kind of like just some empty space. So I can move items off to this off the artboard and just leave them there, and it doesn't hurt anything. It just kind of hangs out there and it's perfectly fine. So I'm going to start with the selection tool. We have a selection tool, which is the black arrow, and a direct selection tool, which is the white arrow. And the best way that I can explain the difference between the two is using the pen tool. So I'm going to click on the pen tool here, and I'm going to go ahead and just click. I can click some random lines. if I hold shift down, it goes in 45-degree increments so that I get a straight line. I can also click, hold, and drag, and I can get kind of these curves. If I wanted to go with a straight line now, you can see that I'm getting this real big curve in here. So I can click on that point and it actually gets rid of that long handlebar that was coming out. And now I can just make straight lines, maybe a curve again, click on that, and it gets rid of that handlebar. So if I go to the selection tool, that black arrow, that allows me to move the entire shape around. If I click on the direct select tool, the white arrow, I can actually select points and move those points around. So when I select this, you can see right now that every dot or point is solid. That means I'm going to move the whole shape. If I want to only affect a point, then when I select it, I just select each point. You could see that's solid and that's hollow. If I want to select multiple points, I can hold shift down. So right now I'm only affecting one point. I can move that around. I can hold shift down, and now I am moving both of those points together. I can also click, hold, and drag, and now I'm going to select all the points that were underneath that selection that I just made. So you could see all of these are now selected, so I can move those around. I can also add points. If I click and hold on the pen tool, that little arrow means that there's other options. So I'm going to add points. So I can add points to an existing line, and I can go in and move those. I can also subtract points using the delete anchor point. So I can just come in and delete a point. The anchor point tool, that allows me to click, go back here, click, hold, and drag, and it brings those handlebars back. So if I wanted to have the handlebars again, so let me click here. There's no handlebars there, so if I wanted there to be, I could just click on it and it brings them back. And with that direct select tool, I can also just move these any way that I want with that direct select tool. Okay, so next we're going to look real quickly at our layers. So two of these palettes that we use often would be layers and swatches. So I'm going to click on layers and I'm going to drag it out. So I just clicked on the word layers and I just held it and moved it. So it brought it out of this, this box here. So I can move it back in if I wanted to. And then collapse it. But since we use it often, I'm going to click, hold, and drag and move it up to the top here. And then I'm just going to collapse that down again. I'm going to do the same thing with swatches. So the icon that looks like all these little boxes, if you hover, it's going to tell you what it is. And I'm going to grab the swatches and move that out here and collapse that one. So now I have my layers and I have my swatches out. And if I go to the bottom, I can actually open this up a little bit more. All right, so right now I have layer 1. So on layer 1, I can just name this pen tool. And if I highlight it, you could see it's blue, and that's because this layer is associated with blue. If I make a new layer, down here at the bottom, create new layer, you could see this layer is red. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and make a new artboard. I can do that a few ways. I can go under Document Setup, Edit Artboards, and now it's highlighting this artboard and telling me that it's 11 inches wide, 8.5 tall. So I can click, hold, and drag, and I could drag it until it reaches the size that I wanted. So you probably noticed, let me do that again. Let me go back to Edit Artboard and let me just delete that. So if I click, hold, and drag, you can see on that bottom right corner, it's telling me the size. So I can get it to be 5 to 5. So I can do it that way. I can also type in here, I want 6 by 6. And you want to give it some space from your other artboards. So if I had a shape that was off the artboard like this, and then I tried to move the artboard. So I'm going to use this quick artboard tool down here. Same thing as the way I just went, but if I move this, it kind of goes with it. So you want to make sure that you're giving some space between your artboards. So I'm going to give it a little space, and I'm just going to move this over. So now I have a second artboard here. And artboards are different than layers, so I can still be on the pen tool layer. I can really draw whatever I want, but I'm on a different artboard, but still the same layer, so they're different. Let me talk for a minute about strokes versus fills. So this item right here actually has a white fill and a black stroke. So we can't see a fill since it's white and the artboard's white. But if I click this arrow, you can now see that it's a black fill and a white stroke. So you can kind of see that white stroke through here. And if I wanted to change the fill color, I would just make sure the fill is in the front versus the stroke being in the front. And I can come over to my swatches and change it to any color that I want it to be. So there, now I have a blue fill and a white stroke. I can also take the stroke off, so let me make it a blue stroke. I have to select the item, and now I have a blue stroke. So if I don't want to fill it all, I can actually just click this white box with the red line that says none, and I could do the same thing in my swatches palette over here. Click none, and now it has no fill to it. So now it's just the stroke. All right, so moving on to our next artboard, we're going to talk for a second about lines. So we can make lines with the pen tool. You can also make lines with the line segment tool. So with the line segment tool, I'm basically just drawing a line. I can hold shift down and it becomes a perfect straight line. This line is blue. That's the last color I used, so I can click on it, change the color to whatever I want. I can also make a new swatch. If I come to the little lines off to the side and click new swatch, I can type in a number. So if I wanted 35, 28, and we'll just leave that at 239. So now I have this RGB blue color, and I can say OK, and let me just close that. So now I have this new blue color in my palette. I could also move it around, like if I wanted to move it to the top, I could. So I can select this and make my line this new blue color. This is a lot of colors and it can get kind of messy, so I suggest you go over to these lines off to the side of the swatches, select all unused, and hit the trash can. So what that just did is it deleted all of the extra colors that I wasn't using, just cleans up your document. So if I select my line, I can select it just by hovering and clicking, click, hold, and drag. This is showing me that it's a 1-point stroke. Now we're going to open our strokes panel off to the right, so it's the little lines. I'm just going to click on it. Then I'm going to click the little lines here and say show options, so it gives us some options. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this line, copy, Command-C, Command-V, and duplicate it. You could do this many ways. I can also go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste, Command-C, Command-V. My personal favorite way, it's the fastest. I just click on it, hold down Option-Shift, click, hold, drag, Option-Shift, let go, and it duplicates it for you. So if I wanted to make this a little bit thicker, I can definitely increase that stroke. Maybe I want this one to be 10, so I can even just type in 10. There's some options here for the cap. This is really nice. I'm going to click on my magnifier, my zoom tool, and I'm just going to zoom in here. I can also click, hold, and drag, and it zooms in, or I can hit Command plus, Command minus, another way that you can zoom in. So let me zoom in a little here. I'm going to select this larger one. and the cap's going to be a butt cap, which just means that the cap goes to the end of the point. If you select the right one, it says projecting cap. It actually just projects out a little further, or this middle one is a round cap. So sometimes you might want a rounded edge, and that's always nice to have as well. All right, so let me go ahead and zoom out. So these lines are on my pen tool layer, but maybe I want them on a different layer, and I want that layer to be called lines. So I clicked on that layer twice and went ahead and typed in lines. Now I have them highlighted and they're showing on this pen tool layer, so I'm going to click that blue square, hold it, drag it, and drop it on the lines tool. Now you can see it's highlighted in red. So if I move it back, now it's highlighted in blue. So that just associates with the layer that it's on. So there is our second artboard. So I'm going to make a third artboard. This time I'm going to make it with this Artboard tool, which you can see it's also Shift 0. So if I hold down Shift 0, it's going to take me to that. I'm sorry, it's Shift O. It's going to take me to that icon. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a new layer. This one's going to be 10 inches by 3 inches. All right, and this one we're going to use for text. So I'm going to go grab the Type tool, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. Grab the Type tool, click. I'm just going to type in hello. I'm going to highlight it. So I can highlight it by click, hold, and drag, or I can just click in there twice and it'll highlight the whole thing. Command Shift and the greater than allows you to increase the size. I can also do it up here at this top. I can increase it. I can type in a number if I wanted to. I can also grab the selection tool, go to the bottom corner, or any corner really, and just drag it, but I'm holding Shift down because if I don't hold Shift down, you alter the text and it compromises the typeface, and I want to maintain that typeface. So I'm going to hold Shift down. So if I wanted to change the color here, I'm going to do it in the same way that I changed my line. So I'm going to just move that fill to the front. I don't want to use blue again. I'm going to make a new swatch. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag these sliders around. Maybe I'm going to make a little deeper green. I'm going to say OK. And now my text is green. And this red line underneath it means it's still editable. So I can come in here and I can type in hello guys. And if I wanted it to fit on the page, I could absolutely just hold Shift and move it down just like that, or click in there and the less than. So Command Shift and less than, greater than is a great way to make your text a little bit larger. All right, so if I wanted this to be on a different layer, I'm going to go ahead and click this Create New Layer, and I'm going to name that Text. And I'm going to click on the text, and I'm going to move that little red dot to the green layer. It's just coincidence that this layer is green and so is my text, but you can see the outside now is green, and that's because it's associated with that layer. So if I highlight these, it's going to show me what layer it's on. Let's go ahead and make a new artboard. And I'm just going to do some random size here. Maybe I'll just change it to 6 by 6, and we're going to talk about brushes. So you're going to see this little panel over here that says brushes. So I'm going to click that open it up. This gives me just some brushes that I can start with. So if I draw something here, click on the line, I can click on these brushes and it changes that line to be whatever the brush is that I'm selecting. One of the great things about Illustrator is that there are these libraries of brushes. So I'm going to open my brush library, and I did that by just going to the brushes panel, those little lines off to the side, open brush libraries. You can go to any of these. I'm just going to go to Artistic, and I'm going to bring this over here, open it up, and at the bottom there's these arrows, And I'm going to circle through these arrows. Like I'm just going to cycle through and try and find some different brushes that I might like. So, and every time I click on one, it's putting it into my brushes panel. So that one's kind of cool. Maybe I'll make another stroke here. I'm going to find something else. I'm going to actually click on it and then select the brush so you can find something, you know, that you like. So there's all these brushes in here. There's kind of these water brushes. So let me click on this, and this kind of looks like a kind of a watermark, which is kind of interesting. So I can click through. I'll just show you some of these. There's some pattern kind of looking brushes. So I could click on some pre-made kind of pattern, but that's just a brush. So those are interesting. So just using these arrows at the bottom, you can cycle through all the different brushes. All right. So if I wanted to make a new layer now for these, I could absolutely do that. Just create new layer, rename it brushes. And I'm going to move that to my brushes layer, and now these are on that brushes layer. So one of the things that I do want to bring to your attention is that these layers work very much like Photoshop, so whatever's on the top is what you're going to see first. So if I have these all on an one artboard, so let's say I move these, I'm going to move this over, and I'm going to move these, oops, I'm going to move these down for a second. So right now you can see that my text is in front of this other stuff, and that's because the text is on the top. But if I click that, hold it, and move it to the bottom, then you can see that my lines are in the front. So it does make a difference on the order that you have over here as to what we're seeing on top and below. All right, so let's talk next about shapes. I'm going to undo just to get it back to where I had it, and I'm going to make a new artboard, and I am going to make a new layer, call it shapes, and down below the type tool, right now it shows a star. Oftentimes it'll be the rectangle or maybe the ellipse tool. So we'll start with the rectangle, and I know I'm going to want to fill it, so I'm going to just go ahead and swap that around. I can click, hold, and drag, and I can make any size rectangle I want, or I can hold shift and it makes a perfect square. If I click and hold, I can go to the ellipse tool, and it's the same thing. Any size I want, hold shift, you get that circle. I can also make it just a stroke and no fill. I'm going to click on that again. We're going to go to the polygon tool. So the polygon tool, if I click and hold, it's going to give me the last shape that I made. If I just click, it says how many sides do you want. So obviously 3 makes a triangle. I can increase this. I can change the radius. There is a 5-side shape. I can click and hold. There's the star tool. So if I click and drag, it gives me the last star that I made. If I just click, I can change this to some number or whatever I want. There's my 99 side pointed star. So you can kind of play with these shapes over here, and then there's a flare tool as well. I don't use that very often. It's fun, but you can use these shapes. The other thing to note is that you can alter these shapes, so I can use my pen tool. I can start with one shape but add some other points, and then I can alter them any way that I wanted to. So that's a great way to make some organic type shapes. You can start with the whatever shape you want, and then you can alter them yourself if you wanted to. All right, the hand tool is also a great tool just to be able to move around, especially when you're zoomed in really close. If you just want to be able to like move around like this, that hand tool is great. You can also use this eyedropper tool. So let's say that I had a green shape and I want to make this star green, I can grab the eyedropper and just click in there, and it picks up the attributes of whatever I eyedropper. So that's a really great tool also to use. Okay, we're going to save next. So I'm going to go to File, Save, and I'm just going to save this to my desktop, but our nomenclature is last name, first initial, so I'm going to capitalize, underscore, whatever the class is. This is Illustrator 1, which you could capitalize if you wanted to. And this is Exercise 1 Basics. And it's an AI file, so I'm going to go ahead and save that to my desktop. So I can close this, and I can see here is my file with that naming convention. The next thing that I'm going to want to do is organize. So when you're starting out in any class, you really want to make sure that you have a folder that's specifically for that class. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to name it Illustrator 1. And I'm going to double click on that, and inside there I'm going to make another new folder, and I can do that a few ways. New folder, file, new folder, or Command Shift N for new. So in here I'm going to say exercises. I'm going to do another folder, projects, another folder called Linda. If you do Linda in your class, maybe you want one that says homework. And then I can go ahead and drag that folder or that file into the exercises folder. So I typically look at it as on this view so that I can kind of see the path of everything. So in the Illustrator 1 file, now I have exercises, and there's my AI file. I would probably make another folder that says E1 Basics, and I would just move that into there because I know that there's going to be other exercises. So I might have an E2 and whatever that might be called, and I might have an E3. So now it's just kind of keeping it all organized and everything's easy to find. All right, that's it.